They thought the cane meant weak, they thought the gray hair meant harmless, and they thought the silence meant permission. That was their first mistake, because silence isn't consent. It's often just someone choosing not to scream yet. You know what I mean. My name is Walter Brooks, and this is one of those stories people say sounds made up until you realize how often it happens, just not to people who get the chance to tell it. I was 71 when it happened. Retired, widowed, bad knees, decent roses, living alone in a blue house on Hawthorne Drive in Redwood Glen. The kind of town where folks smile politely but never really see you. And that afternoon I was doing exactly what I always did, pulling weeds from the edge of the driveway, talking to myself, thinking about my wife, thinking about nothing at all, when a voice cut through the heat like it had been waiting for me. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I looked up slow, because that's what you learn to do when your body doesn't forgive fast moves, and there it was, a patrol car angled into my driveway like it belonged there, engine running, officer leaning back like the street was his living room. I told him I lived there. Just like that, simple, calm, polite, because that's how you survive a lot of conversations in this country. And he didn't answer right away, just stepped out, boots loud on the pavement, eyes moving over me like he was checking a list I'd already failed. He said there'd been a call, suspicious person. People worried, and I laughed a little, because it didn't make sense, because I'd been the same quiet old man for years. But he didn't laugh. He smirked, looked at my cane, my knees, my skin, then the house, and said he didn't remember seeing me before, like that meant something. I reached for my cane to stand up straighter, and that's when his tone snapped, hand dropping to his belt, telling me not to reach, calling my cane a weapon. And right there, something heavy settled in my chest, because I'd heard that word used that way before, not for safety, but for permission. I told him my ID was inside on the counter. I offered to get it, to show him the mailbox, the deed, the neighbor, anything that would end the moment. But he was already talking into his shoulder, like he'd made a decision, saying I was refusing trespassing, possible threat. And when he told me to get on the ground, I actually looked down at the concrete and thought, if I go down there, I'm not getting back up, not without help. So I told him the truth, and the truth made him angry. You could see it, the red climbing his neck, the way his jaw tightened, and then his hand came up fast, open palm, no warning, no hesitation. And the sound it made was loud enough that I still hear it sometimes at night. I went down, hard glasses, skidding, cheek scraping, concrete, breath gone, dignity gone with it, and before I could even say what happened, he was on me. Knee in my back, twisting my arms, shouting commands I couldn't follow, telling me to stop resisting while I lay there stunned. And yeah, that happened right in my own driveway, while curtains stayed still and the street pretended not to notice. The ride to the station was worse than the fall, sharp turns, laughter into a phone, a story being told about me while I sat bent and cuffed, and when I asked for a phone call because I knew I had that right, he leaned in close and told me the phones were down, like he was sharing a joke. The cell was cold concrete bench, cold, the kind that creeps into your bones, and hours passed while my face swelled and my wrists ached, and I tried to remember how to breathe slow like I used to when work got overwhelming, in and out, until footsteps came and a young officer slipped me a phone like she was handing over contraband, whispering, 2 minutes, that's all, and my hands shook so bad I almost dropped it. I didn't call a lawyer, didn't call a friend. I called my son Ethan, because sometimes the truth is, you don't need advice, you need backup. He answered, calm, professional, and when I told him what happened, there was a pause that felt heavy, not confused but focused. And he told me to say nothing else, sign nothing, that he was coming. And when the line went dead, I felt something I hadn't felt since the slap, hope sharp and scary and real. By morning, Ethan was standing at the front desk of that station in a suit that didn't wrinkle, voice low, badge flashing just enough to change the air in the room, and suddenly the officer who hit me wasn't laughing anymore. He was explaining, shrugging, saying, cameras malfunctioned, saying things happen, and Ethan listened, nodded, asked for footage logs, medical records, wrote everything down like patience was a weapon. Then he left, and that's when the story turned, because while some people think justice only lives in courtrooms, it often starts on sidewalks and front porches, knocking on doors, asking uncomfortable questions. A neighbor saw it all. Another neighbor's grandson had been flying a drone, just messing around, recording the neighborhood, because kids do that now. And the footage was clear, painfully clear, me gardening the approach, the tone, the slap, the lie, unraveling frame by frame. In court, weeks later, the officer testified like he'd rehearsed, said I swung first, said he feared for his life, said my cane came up like a club, and I sat there listening, feeling small and old and tired, wondering if truth actually mattered anymore, until Ethan nodded at the lawyer and the screen lit up. Nobody breathed. You could feel the room shrink as the video played, my hands empty, my voice calm, his hand flying, my body falling, and when it ended, the silence wasn't respectful, it was shocked, the kind that comes when a lie collapses in public. The officer stood, too fast, knocked his chair back. The judge's face went pale, the prosecutor looked anywhere but the screen, and then Ethan stood. Badge visible, voice, steady words, precise. Federal warrant, deprivation of rights. Perjury, and agents walked in, like punctuation at the end of a sentence that had gone on too long. Watching the man who hit me get cuffed didn't feel like joy. Not exactly. It felt like air returning to a room I hadn't realized was suffocating me. And when I walked out free past cameras and questions and noise, I just wanted to go home. Months passed. Investigations happened. Settlements were paid. Policies changed on paper. The officer went to prison. People asked me if it felt like justice, and I tell them this justice felt quiet, like sitting back in my garden knees, aching, roses growing anyway, knowing I'd been seen at last. But here's the part that still keeps me up. The part I want you to think about with me because my story ended the way it did, not just because the truth existed, but because someone with power chose to listen. And not everyone gets that call answered. Not everyone has a son like mine. Not everyone's truth makes it to a screen in a courtroom. So I want to know what you think. Really think, was this justice or was it luck dressed up as fairness? How many stories never get told because the phone never rings, because the door never opens, because the silence stays silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments, push back if you disagree, share. If you've seen something like this, because these conversations matter more than people like to admit. And if you've ever wondered whether speaking up changes anything, well, you're listening to someone who's still here because it did.